Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to make the second stitch journal, which will be the Boro inspired one. The main difference about this and the other stitch journal, which is already in the playlist, is that this will have, you can do it one of two ways. It will have a removable signature of cloth. A signature is the little booklet within a book. And this one here in the middle of this is tied in with this bit of vintage trim. The principle being that then you can take that out and you can stitch on it. You can add stitch pieces to it, or you can do stitching directly onto it without having to wrestle with the whole book, so you could do it one signature at a time. I have actually stitched this one together, just simply with a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, which I'll show when we get to that. You could, if you wanted to, just leave it unstitched, so just leave it folded, you know, like so, and tied in. And then you could stitch page by page, and then when you're done you could stitch it together or not, you know, just have it tied in. Anyway, that's the principle. So rather than, and there was this one as well, which was a similar principle, but this had only can't get my words out this morning, I do apologise. This had only tied in cloth signatures, 3 of them. So 1, 2, 3, do you see that? But the principle is exactly the same. This one has got 2 paper signatures bound in. So I thought what I'll do is I'll make one Boro inspired with old denim and such and so forth, and then when I come to put the innards in, I'll show you the 2 ways of doing it. So then you can choose, either you can have 3 tied in, or however many you want, you know, tied in signatures and nothing actually bound in, or you could bind in some pages, paper pages, and then just have as many, you know, 1 or more tied in alongside. I hope that makes sense. I must say it hardly makes sense to me, but anyway, hopefully it will become clear as we go along. So we're going to do the cover first. So I thought what I would do is make this part 1 just about making the cover. And I'm going to make the cover in its entirety before I bind in, tie in, or do anything of the sort. So I'm going to make the outer part of the cover and do all the stitching. And then I'm going to put some cardboard reinforcement in the middle, which will be optional, and some cardboard inside the spine. And then once all that's done, we'll bind the pages directly through to the outside. So that being said, I'm going to factor in. Let's put those all to one side. So I'm going to work on this little foundation cloth, and I've written down the measurements because, you know, my brain. This measures 6 by 15, so I'm aiming to have a 6-inch square journal with a 2-inch spine, and twice 6 plus 2 equals 14, so I've just added an extra inch, just, you know, wiggle room. So 6 by 15, this is just a bit of old cotton sheet, just quite thin, because I'm going to be stitching bits of denim to it. So the first thing I want to do is find roughly where the middle will be, because I want to factor in, and just make a crease, when I'm placing my pieces on, that an inch either side of there will be the spine. So it will have to be stitched through if I'm going to stitch in paper signatures. Okay, so in terms of my design, I want to make sure that I don't put anything fancy here that I might later on want to cover up. It will be clear at the end, and you don't have to start making it until you've seen the whole thing. So, so here I've got a little stack of scraps of denim, all different kinds and colours. The holy grail of bits of denim is denim that doesn't have lycra, but I think all of this does, or maybe that doesn't, or not much. The really, really stretchy denim with lycra, I don't really like too much to work with. And you see that's really stretchy. But that's also quite thin, and some of it can be quite thick, and if you're layering. But, you know, if you've got scraps of denim, you can buy denim scraps on eBay. I've, in the past, before I had a collection myself, I have bought sort of mixed bags for a couple of pounds of denim scraps if you haven't got a load like that. You could also, of course, just use blue cloth of various kinds if you wanted the Japanese Boro inspired look. So I'm going to make a start and stop wittering on. I'm going to, first of all, because of what I said about the spine, find a piece. I think I just want one piece. What about this piece? One piece for the spine, or wider than the spine. It's got a bit of a stain on it, that piece. These have all been washed, but you know, denim, it's workaday stuff, isn't it? Workaday stuff. How about this bit of greyness? Maybe that's nicer. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna try and tear it. I'm just gonna do it by eye. If you want to measure, feel free. I've got my mat. I was gonna say I don't have a measuring device. I'm going to make it about 2.5 inches, or maybe even. I'm gonna make it 3 inches ish, because I plan on my spine being 2. So then it gives me a. Will it tear? Excuse the tearing sound. If you're one of those that don't like tearing, put your fingers in your ears. Okay, you can take them out. Now you can't hear me. Take your fingers out your ears. That tore quite nicely. Quite nicely. In fact, it tore so nicely that side that I want it to be torn the other side, but now I can't because, anyway, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And I'm going to put that like that, and I'm going to cut some off so it's the right length. And I'm going to use the same old technique that I use, the fabric collage that I used in the cloth pouch video. There's going to be lots of me getting rid of frayed bits. So I'm going to just lay that like that there, like that. So that's, I see my little line where I creased, that's roughly where my spine's going to be. I'm not going to pin it for the moment. And now I'm going to build up my covers, front and back, with some more scraps of denim. Denim, it's called denim because it came from Nîmes, which is a town in France. So it's de Nîmes, of Nîmes, in case you didn't know that. I'm overlapping by about 1/2 inch, or thereabouts. And then where I overlap, I'm going to put some pins. 1 or 2, maybe 2. You could, of course, if you've only got one old pair of jeans or whatever, just collage all the same denim. You'll still get the interest of the lines and the junctions and the seams and everything. If you haven't got a stash like this of old bits and bobs. That's quite a nice, and also look at the back. Sometimes the back, you know, sometimes the front's a bit bright blue and you want it more muted. I plan to just leave my edges raw, the edges of my journal, and not turn anything under or anything because of the thickness. You could do a binding around the edge if you didn't like the raw edge look. Do that like that. The other thing is, if you have things that don't exactly meet, later on I'm going to sew on some little patches like I did with this one in the colours, but I'm going to stay with blue here. So you can strategically place your patches. I like to build in ways of covering, you know, boo-boos, mistakes, no such thing, when I do things, so that to take away as much of the stress as possible. So there's those bits there like that. It's still raining here. It's been raining, I think it's been raining since about the end of September. It feels to me like we had, I'm in France, in southwest France. It feels to me like we had summer, way too hot, completely dry, no rain for months and months and months. And it went from that into constant rain. That's how it feels to me. I should put that bit there like that. I think I might tuck that under there like that. And just get that end off. See if it tears. It's always a bit of hit and miss now. You see, I didn't think that was going to, and it won't, so I'm going to cut a somewhat straight line. Well, I'm not entirely happy about that sticky out corner, but I don't know, just something about it that looks a bit ugly to me. And also I've overlapped that by quite a lot, but it doesn't matter. Like I said, I can cover it up later, in a later stage. I need something up here. What shall I put up there? I had such a neat little stack, but of course it's already degenerated into a big mess. And some of this light blue. Oh, that's a bit bright. That's a bit better. I want to make some more room. So I want it to be about that big, I think. That big. Will it tear? Snip. Let's see if it tears. Cross your fingers. It did. And then, you know, like I say about the lycra, then you get this, that's the elasticy stuff that's come out. Not nice. I would prefer if it was all cotton. But, you know, you have to work with what you've got. It's a bit too much of an overlap. So you just fiddle about. You can have as many or as few pieces as you like, you know. There's no reason why you couldn't just have a piece for the spine and a whole piece front and back as well, and then make it decorative by your scraps that you sew on, or keep it plain. I suppose what I'm saying is there are many options. You will notice that's now too big there. I shall trim that later. Pinny pins. I've run out of pins in that pin cushion. I'll have to get this one in. So, Japanese Boro, if you don't know, is it's a mending technique, but it's traditionally blue because that was what they had, was indigo dyed cotton. I'm going to trim that edge. And I'm always careful in terms of respecting cultures and so forth. It's maybe pedantry, but I do think it is important to some people to call it what I do Boro inspired rather than Boro, because this is not Boro. Boro is, you know, the actual garments and household items that were mended through necessity. So this kind of is not Boro because it's modern denim rather than indigo dyed cloth. Excuse me. Well, it is indigo, but it's synthetic indigo. Just, you know, I just feel that it's important when you're working with cultures that are not your own to be a little bit respectful. Now, do I like that circly thing? I do think I do. I do think I do. So I think I'm going to pin that under because that fray is quite nice. Leave that like that for a minute and put some pins into. I should have taken my cream undercloth away for the pinning and had the cutting mat. Because what I'm going to do, and I'm sure you can see it coming at one point, is pin right through. Have I got any more of that dark blue? That was a dress of mine that I had years and years ago, and I wore it for, it was like a little pinafore dress, a short pinafore dress, and I wore it for gardening and, you know, we had pigs at one point many years ago, mucking out pigs, and it got mended a few times and then it just fell apart, and so I salvaged the good bits. But it was a lovely dress, and every time I use a bit of it I think, I miss that dress, I miss that dress. Do I need to, no, it's thin enough. I was wondering, because I've put quite a big chunk under there, can you see? Yes you can. If I should trim more of that away, but they're both thinnish, so I'm going to just leave it like that, and not pin myself to my cloth underneath. Now I want something long and thin there, don't I? Of course I could cut something, but if I've got something that's already long and thin, getting the nasty lycra bits out. I mean, you know, when I do have jeans that don't have lycra in, like proper vintage jeans. I must say with lycra in, they are nicer to wear. That's not really wide enough. So I guess it's a double-edged sword, the lycra. This doesn't feel nice and it's not very nice to stitch. Anyway, stop moaning. Well, I'm not really moaning. I'm pointing out the drawbacks of using modern denim. There is a Facebook group that I follow called, it's called Denim Upcyclers or something like that, and people basically share all kinds of things they've made out of old denim. And on there are endless debates about, not sure about that now either, there are endless debates about, that's nicer, lycra in jeans or not, or how do you find jeans that aren't lycra'd. There we go. And also, talking of jeans, there is, I'll put it in the description because I can't, I think she's called Justine, the lady, but I can't remember her Instagram name off the top of my head. But she had a project, she's in the UK, in Britain, and she had a project where she grew the cloth and dyed the cloth and so forth to make her own jeans. You know, sustainably. It's a wonderful project. I'll put the link in the description if you want to go and have a look at it. Now I need a little bit of something in that little space there. Do this bit. How about this bit? How about if I half cover that circle? Basically, you're doing a jigsaw, a denim jigsaw. I don't know if I like that. Yeah, I think I do. I think I do. And I'm overlapping on all kinds of things, and I'll probably rue the day once I come to actually have to stitch through some of it. But just do be aware of the thickness of your overlaps, because it's already thick. So there I've got 1, 2, 3 bits of denim all in one place, but they're all quite, well, those two are quite thin and that's quite old and worn. That was my son's jeans, I remember. Children are a good source of worn out denim because they wear it out quite nicely for you. Right, so I just put a little pin in there, and I'm going to then baste everything on before I start anything else, because that's what I like to do with the invisible base stitch. I'm going to turn it over and trim that back to the edge. Ish, because I can always trim it again once it's all stitched. See, there's odd bits sticking out here and there, but it doesn't matter. So there we go. I'll call that denimed, and I shall put that away because it's taking up too much room. And now I'm going to do the invisible baste, which if you've watched any of my other videos, I'm sure you've seen me do before. I'm using this Silco vintage machine thread in the colour Cactus Blue, because it's blue. And I'm going to I think I'm just going to, in this instance, basically go around the edges of the patches. So I might have to stop at my end of the frame, doing that naughty thing of pulling it towards me. So, invisible baste, I'm just going to come through from the back. And then the principle is that you do a little back stitch on the front, like 2 or 3 threads of cloth, and then a bigger stitch on the back, which I've done about 3/4 of an inch. Get the pin out. And this is a base that stays in. I have to be aware that, excuse me, that not everybody watches all my videos, so I'm sorry if you do and I keep repeating things. But it's very hard to get invisible basting stitch out because the back stitch locks it. So it's 2 or 3 stitches, 2 or 3 threads backwards, pardon me. And then I'm just going to say I've taken an inch there just to get myself to that corner, because there's going to be lots and lots and lots of stitching going on over the top, so this is literally just to hold it all so I don't have to be worrying about pins when I'm doing my stitching. Tiny teeny back stitch, big front stitch. Yeah, if you were going to do basting that you would want to take out, you just do normal basting, you know, where you do a big stitch front and a big stitch back. Because I have tried to get this out and you literally have to cut every stitch. It's that good at its job. And on the front you get these teeny tiny little dots, which if you've matched your colour of your thread to your cloths, or if you're using neutral cloth, if you use a neutral thread, if you're using different coloured cloth, you hardly see it. Get that pin out. It's lovely if you've collaged a piece of, a cloth, when you get that final pin out and everything's held and you've created this whole new surface to stitch on. Where did I start now? I can't see. I've got to go along there as well. Actually, it's not that bad to stitch through at the moment, that triple thing. If you're unsure, if you're laying your bits on, just get an empty needle and have a poke and see if it goes through nicely. Because you want to know before you've committed, and especially if you plan to do a lot of stitching over the top, you want to know that it's going to be nice to stitch through and not a nightmare. So you see I just came off the edge there and took the opportunity to go along this edge since I was in the right place. You can try and plan ahead and plan a route, as much as possible, so you don't have to keep ending and starting again. I just start somewhere and see what happens. Just see what happens. Like they say, it's all about the journey. So I'm going to come up maybe 1/2 inch from the very edge of the piece, and I'm going to go around the edge but 1/2 inch in, because I might want to do some trimming. And it wouldn't matter, like I said, if you did, when trimming, cut through your basting thread, because the rest of it wouldn't go anywhere. Make sure it stays flattish. And go along this edge. The dog is in here, but she's sleeping, so I won't say her name. The cat, and I won't say his name either, because that sets the dog off, is downstairs. Downstairs on the end of one of my kitchen worktops is a little square basket that was my fruit bowl for a long time, and I've now got I changed to another bowl that I already had, which is a china bowl for my fruit. It lives on the kitchen table. And so I put a little square basket on the end of the dresser, I think it was about 2 or more weeks ago, to bring upstairs into my studio to put stuff in. I don't know what stuff, but you always need a basket for something. Anyway, Fred has started sleeping in it. And in the beginning it had all kinds of things in. There was a little glass jar that had some fancy mustard in, one of those teeny tiny jars that I washed out when the mustard was gone, because it's a nice little jar for something. That was in there. There was even, I've got some things with English plugs on still, so we have adapters, so you can plug an English plug into a French socket. There was one of those in there, and the 2 prongs were pointing up like this. And there was basically all bits and bobs that I was throwing in there that needed to come upstairs for one reason or another. To cut a long story a bit shorter, all that was in there. Still Fred was in there sleeping on all the spiky things and glass bottles and things like that. So he's not, the Princess and the Pea, where the princess could feel the pea through I don't know how many mattresses. Well, Fred is not a princess or even a prince, apparently. But I took pity on him and I took all the spiky things out. But I've left the basket there because he's decided that's where he sleeps. So if you leave a receptacle about the place at one point and you've got a cat, the cat will get in it. Now my thread's about to run out. So I think what I'm going to do, I've just got that little end there. I'm just going to go that way and do a stitch in there. Since that's a dead end and my thread's running out anyway. I'm going to flip him over and then you can see on the back all my longer stitches. And do a couple of back stitches just, you know, to hold it in place. I'm going to a bit more of my silicone. I lick my end. Thread my needle. This is actually a really nice colour, isn't it? How much there is left to go? Oh, not much. I get excited when they start to run out because then I can use them for a stitch meditation scroll, which probably by the time I upload this video, I have made the stitch meditation scroll video, I haven't uploaded it yet. Probably by the time you're listening to this, it will be there, if you want to know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I need to go down there. I think I'm going to go down there, around there, around. It's like planning a journey. So I'll go back here to where I finished off, alongside this fluffiness. And I have no idea yet how I'm going to decorate the cover, the surface, beyond the fact that I did think I would do it all blue. So I've got little blue scraps of cloth that I've pulled out of my scrap basket, and I've got some different blue threads, and I've got some blue bits of lace as well, and trims and things. I don't often go really fluffy and trimmy and, you know, lacy. It's not really my style, but you never know. So I thought I'd have it all here ready in case the mood strikes. This is my most favourite needle, which I brought up from downstairs. I don't know how many needles I have. I must have a lot. But this little one, which is a tulip embroidery needle, not sure what number, can't remember. Probably maybe a 9. Maybe a 9 or a 10. And it's slightly bent, so it just falls into my hand nicely. And it's my favourite needle. It's like you train them when you use needle. I can hardly see, I'm sorry, I have to get my head in the way, but oops, I got a knot. Yeah, it's like you train needles when you use them a lot. Do you get attached to needles, or, you know, do you just use any old needle and it doesn't matter? I guess it's a personal thing. Brief moment of silence and you can hear the needle going through the cloth, I hope. I can also hear the dog snoring. I don't know if you can hear that. Now I have to turn and go around my little curvy bit. See, that's just moved slightly. That's because that's the piece with all the lycra, the really stretchy piece. I'll push it back into place. Sorry, when I pick it up it goes right up in your face. I do apologise. And then when I get to the end of this little curve, I've just got to do that edge, so I'm probably going to have to knot off my thread and start again. But it's just the way it is. I have no idea at the moment which is going to be the front and the back. I think probably this little curve might be the front, but who knows, it might change. So I'm just going to go through to the back and finish off. If I was really close to where I wanted to be, you know, like maybe 1.5 inches or so away, or 2 inches, I might just take a couple of little stitches in the backing cloth and jump over there. Or if I was super duper close, I'd just jump over there. But that was a bit far. So I cut off and start again. If you can't see where you are on the front, because it really is invisible, just have a look at the back and then you'll see straight away where you need to start from. Through my lovely bit of old dress. Had loads of pockets as well, this pinny dress. But I wore it and so it fell apart. I think these bits that I've got here are from inside the pockets, you know, they've not faded or anything. They've been protected. Oopsie. Come on. I have to get it up to my face because I can't actually see. There we go, that's it. If you get a little knot like that in your sewing thread, it's best to tease at it rather than pull at it. Often if you get your needle under the loop and pull, it'll just slide out. And sometimes you have to get your needle in the loop. This depends how the loop's been made. But tease at it and talk to it nicely. Don't get cross with it because it'll just tangle even more out of spite. Right, so that's side one, whether it's the front or the back. And now I'm going to do side two. A short bit of thread. See, now I start thinking, I've got a short bit of thread. Is there a short run I can do? If you lay your thread on, if you've got about 1.5 the length of where you want to go, you've probably got enough. Or, you know, 1 and a good bit. I think I'm just going to go all the way along this side. Pin out. It's gone quiet. I wonder if I go quiet if you wonder if my microphone's packed up. Or if I've stopped talking for a minute. Actually, there should have been a pin there, shouldn't there? Look at that naughty one flapping about. Let's put a pin there. I forgot. See, you can see my needle. Can you see how bent him he is? The very fine needles, I've got some milliner's needles with a long eye, also tulip brand. Bend for a long time, long time. I mean, I'm talking years. I think I got my first lot of tulip needles when I discovered them was at a show in the UK that I was at with the group I was part of. At UWE, which is the University of the West of England in Bristol. Excuse me. They used to have a textile art quilt type show every year. It doesn't happen anymore, unfortunately. Anyway, I was exhibiting there, and then on one of the stands were these lovely tulip needles, and I was actually seduced by the packaging, which is gorgeous. And I bought a pack of these applique, however you say it, long-eyed needles. And they're really fine, but because they've got a long eye, they're not that bad to thread. And I'm talking because at the same time I'm trying to think when that was. It must be 10 years ago. It must be 10 years ago at least. And the other day, the applique long-eyed needle, very, very fine. I've got one here to show. Is that one? Yeah, that's one. Anyway, it broke after 10 years. And this is the other one because I've had one in my sewing pouch and one in my needle cushion. Do you see how it's bent? But it lasted that long, and anything I was doing that I wanted a really fine needle, I was using one of 2 needles. So I can't really complain. It's, you know, and they're so lovely to sew with. They just go through. They're so sharp. They're just lovely. Not sponsored or anything, just what I like. So I'm going to go look on the back. I'm going to go that way, I think. I'm sorry, that itchy head. Oh, shadow. The sun coming out. It heard me complaining about the rain. I'll just have a look if it's making. It's not too bad, the shadow. It's still quite early in the day, so it's not completely round yet. This side of the house. I'm at the back of the house, upstairs in what used to be part of the barn. In my studio. Maybe one day, I see other people and I always find it interesting. I've done little studio tours, a little show around their studio or their sewing room or their, you know, their crafting space. I wonder if you would like to see my crafting space, because it must be strange to only see this bit of where I'm sitting now at my desk, or occasionally if I'm doing bookbinding or things like that, I stand up over at my cutting table, which is to my right as I sit here. Maybe you would like a little tour at one point, so you can place me. You can place me in the world. I don't know. If you think that would be interesting, do say so in the comments and I'll see what I can do. I need to go back there a little bit, just to put a couple of stitches in that side bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right over. I'm going to pull my needle through to the back. I'm going to jump right over to that. Do you see? So I've got a super huge stitch on the back. And then I'm going to turn him and come back and fill in between that super huge stitch to get myself back on track, because it wasn't far enough to be bothered with cutting it off and starting again. And then I'm going to carry on along this edge. See there, although there's only 2 layers of denim, it feels it's much thicker. Is there only 2 or is there a bit of that? Anyway, it's only a little area. It'll be alright. Worst case scenario, if you can't manage to take a running stitch through your layers, you know, in and out in one movement, then you might have to do some stab stitching where you go through in one movement and back in another movement through the thicker bits. Or of course you're not obliged to go right through because everything's held with the basting. So if you had a really thick area, you could just do your decorative stitching in a bit just through the top layer. Really just hit a bit of lycra or something, and then I'm going to take a smaller stitch to get myself in the right place. So I'm going to come down this side. This bit's quite thick. If you're choosing cloth generally for projects, if you're buying cloth, and I don't generally buy brand new cloth, but I guess you could do it with brand new cloth, although you might get frowned upon. But if I'm in charity shops, thrift shops, brocants, places like that, and this was a tip that was given to me by a friend of mine. I carry a needle tucked inside my wallet, or you know, somewhere safe. And before I invest in a huge, great big sheet, for example, if I was buying some old sheets, I just try and take a few no stitches because there's no thread, but you know, try the needle through the cloth, because cloth can surprise you. It can be it can feel very fine and soft, but when you actually try to stitch with it, it's quite resistant to the stitch. And other quite thick cloths can be nice to stitch, and the process is so important to me that I enjoy the stitching. It's not something to be struggled through to get the end result. That I don't like to spend a lot of time with, you know, a lot of cloth that isn't nice to stitch. It's just me. Maybe you should ask the stall holder or whoever before you start poking needles through things. I don't know. Nobody's ever objected to me doing it. But it's kind of a way of auditioning. There's a little, I need to jump into there and just do a little stitch just there. I'm not sure whether I like that little junction or not. It's very possible that I might sew something over it in a minute. But anyway, for now, just make sure it's all anchored. One more pin to come out. And one more edge to go along, and that's the first layer all basted. Again, I'm going to do the same thing as I did over there. I'm just going to jump up there and put one stitch and then turn around and come back again. You have to be a little bit careful as well not to pull too tight, because you've got a long length of cloth travelling along the back. If you pull it up too tight, you know, you'll make little puckers. Unless you want puckers. If you want puckers, then go for it. Pull it tight. I'm not going to have enough thread because I've got to go down there and round the corner. So I'm not even going to try. Just got that tiny bit. And do you know what? I'm not even going to bother basting that little corner. Because am I? Oh, go on. Don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. I was thinking I'm not going to bother because I'm probably going to sew something else on there in a minute, but it means I get to use a bit more of my cactus blue when I'm a bit closer to my spool being free. They're lovely when they've got their labels intact, apart from where somebody's put it onto their sewing machine. They're quite hard to, well, quite hard to come by. Sometimes you're lucky and you just find a load. Years ago, years and years ago, when I still lived in the West Country of England, I was in a little antique shoppy type place. Well, it was more than a shop, it was like a big old shed in Dorchester in Dorset, the county town of Dorset, I remember it was. And I'd had, to be fair to my husband, already been in there for quite some time rooting around. And he did have to get home because I think he had a business call or something. There was some reason why he had to get home. So he was getting a bit antsy with the length of time that my browsing was taking. Anyway, what I was specifically looking for was I just wanted a little table that would sit in a corner on my upstairs landing in the flat where I lived, to have my telephone on, you know, the landline. And I saw this old sewing box that was just the right size, and, you know, husband's there tapping his foot and looking pointedly at his watch and all that kind of stuff. So I just grabbed this, and it was not very much money at all, and it was in quite a bad state, but it was the right size and the shape was nice and it was nice wood. So I just grabbed it and I paid I think it was £10 or £15, something like that. And he put it in the car and home we went. And when I got home, it was absolutely full of sewing. It was somebody's sewing box. It's got a little secret drawer. I've still got it, it's downstairs. Had a little secret drawer in the base, and then the lid lifted off. And there's a little tray that lifts out with little compartments. And it's kind of got the feeling of being handmade, but by someone who really knew what they were doing, you know, it was really well made. But it had been varnished at one point, and the varnish was all chipping off. And so anyway, I sanded it all down and I waxed it, and it's downstairs in the living room next to where I sit. Excuse me. But there was such treasure in it. There was, you know, obviously just a woman. I always assume it was a woman. There's no reason why it shouldn't have been a man. Sewing kit, and there were lots of Silco spools and like the hems off trousers that had obviously been taken up, and the person had kept the hem that they cut off in case it came in useful, and things like that. So I spent a lovely afternoon going through looking at all the bits and bobs, most of which I've still got if I haven't used them already. So anyway, so for my telephone table, I got a load of Silco threads that I didn't even know until I got home. Right, so that's all basted. And ready. I haven't done anything here and here, I now notice, but it's held both sides, so it'll be fine. So now I could do one of two things. I could either just start doing some Sashiko inspired stitching. You know, when you do there's Sashiko literally means little stabs in Japanese, and it's the stitching that just means the stitching. Sashiko can be very decorative, you know, with the drawn motifs that you then stitch over, often with white thread on indigo cloth. But I do the more, I don't really do the structured shapey stuff. I do the sort of parallel running stitches one way and then the other way. And so you could do that just now onto this, how it is. Or what I think I will do, here's a little bit of something that was Sashikoed at one point with the shapes, and I've cut it up. I don't know. I think I made it for a workshop as a demonstration piece when I was running a slow stitch group in England. And that's a tiny bit, so maybe that should be on there somewhere. Don't know, I find the white quite jumpy outy. Maybe not. Maybe not on this piece. So you could just stitch it as it is, but you know, I always say more is more. So I might, no, not on the spine. I'm not going to do anything on here. I'm going to leave this until later. Because probably what will happen when I've bound the signatures inside, what I think I'm going to do then is get something like, I don't know, something like that, lace, or that's a bit bright, something, or maybe even two little bits if I only have, it depends how many lines of stitching I have, or maybe I'll just sew something over the individual stitching lines when I've done the basting, the sewing on of the signatures. But I'm going to just leave it for now, so it's just plain, and decide later. But I quite like this little bit, which has been, it's a bit of commercial cloth that was probably a lovely bright blue when it came to me, and now it's gone dingy because I've probably had it in tea. Show a little bit of that somewhere. Tear it. And I've used this technique of just raw edge patching, and especially if you tear and you just get the whole length of warp or weft, whichever way it is, on clothes, you know, to patch clothes, without turning anything under. Or I don't really like the turned under look. That's just my personal choice. I'm going to play about and see where I want it. Maybe there's nice, it breaks up that junction. Make sure I'm going to keep it well away from the edge, because I'm not entirely decided yet whether I'm going to blanket stitch or something, or maybe even sew on a binding. Probably I'll blanket stitch, but just to leave my options open, I'm going to keep away from the edge with my patch. And to pin him there like that. And you could just pin that there like that and then straight away sew it on. Or you could pin a few on and, you know, so you can move them about. And you see what I'm digging in? I'm just going off there and coming back with bits. That's a funny looking bit. That must have been a little, that's got a jiggy jaggy edge. Oh yes, oh yes, I'm liking that. You see, I just plonked that there with no thought at all, and I like it. And it's covered up that weird junction that was underneath there that I didn't like very much. And I also like that it's kind of making a shape with this one. Sometimes you can almost just throw them on willy-nilly and you like it. Now, but I can't have two, I have to have three. I have to have threes of things. There's a bit of dark blue. And like I said before, I've got all these blue threads that I'm going to use, but I might put in a bit of red because I just like the look of a bit of red on blue. Just like it. Oh, sorry, I head-butted you. I got this lights thing here. It's called a ring light, so that you can see what's going on without making shadows, hopefully. But because it's a ring, it's just in front of my forehead / forehead, depending on how you want to say that word, you know, that part of my head. So sometimes I headbutt it when I forget it's there. That's quite good there, isn't it? I'm going to put that there for a minute because I like the way that dark balances that dark. You also have to bear in mind that you're working on it like this, but you won't see necessarily all of it at once, so it's maybe not a bad idea to look at it like that as well. You know, like if that was the cover, and decide whether that pleases you. So, you know, there's no point really balancing this to that because you won't see them both at the same time, if that makes any sense at all. Another nice bit of quite a bright blue. I like bridging these gaps, although I'm torn because I like that fraying. I'm torn. Maybe a thinner bit. Is there a thinner bit? About, there's a thinner bit of a similar colour. So if you've seen traditional Boro, pictures of it, or if you've been lucky enough to see an exhibition every now and then, there are travelling exhibitions of actual antique / vintage pieces. But otherwise, if you go on Pinterest or somewhere like that and search for Boro, you'll see how it looks, you know, where the patches are covering the men's with over time and more stitching's built up. Some beautiful, beautiful cloths, beautiful structured cloths. They get a real like they're one cloth, is what I'm trying to say. But they've evolved, they haven't been made. Someone hasn't sat like this with a load of old bits and made it like this. A piece has been made and then it's worn in certain places and then it's been patched. Or maybe at one point it's been cut and then the good pieces have been cut out and used to make something else. And then that piece wears and that's then patched and so forth. So it's the pieces are, I can't get my word that I'm looking for. The pieces are a testament to the life that they've lived, you know? Someone hasn't sat down and made it like that in a session or several sessions. It's evolved. That's the important thing about Boro, I think. And that's why I would never say, this is Boro, this is not Boro. This is just inspired by Boro. And I need something up here, I think. And I don't know. Oh, I might use this as actual vintage Japanese kimono cotton, which I've only got little bits here and there. Well, I had quite a big bit that a friend gave me. And it's two-sided. So on one side it's this very dark black, really, with the blue, and on this side it's the blue. And we couldn't really work out how that's been done, because it's very fine, woven. So how do you get the thread on one side? That must have been printed on or something. Anyway, big digression. No, that's all too much there now. I really want to use it, but it doesn't really want to go anywhere. I really want to put it there, but I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to do that. Maybe, yes, I'm going to shorten this little piece. I think it's too small to tear. I'm going to cut it and then I'm going to pick at it. Pick at it a bit to make it. Am I still in? Barely. Barely in the shot. There we go. Put another pin. To make room for him. And since that one's that way, you see they're similar size, I'm going to turn that way. So show that there is a bit of method in my madness. And I think I'm going to, do I want it lining up? Or am I getting too lining up? Or do I want it, maybe I'll have it like that. That'll do. Stop faffing about and get on with it. Right. Oh, and I do like that because that's kind of sitting off from that. If you know, do you know what I mean? You know, it's like that. I have to do a mime. When the words fail me, there'll be mimes. It's doing that. And I do want something here. Maybe I'll do something similar here, crossing this. Where's that bigger bit that I had? That I said was too big. It's a bit bright. About this, a bit of my dad's shirt. If you have already seen the Stitch Meditation scroll video, you'll see I've got a whole scroll made out of bits of my dad's silk shirt. I think I might take some of this liney part away. I like to put bits of his silk shirts into things wherever I can. And I quite like those little motifs. Do it like that. Shall I do it like that? Yeah. Right. Now you could do one of two things once you're happy with, you know, if you're putting little patches over the top. You could either just go straight away into your fancy stitching, or you could baste those on first. I am going to, don't all groan, if you don't want to watch me do loads more basting, just fast forward. But I'm going to baste them on. For the process of it, I'm just much happier stitching away with all the pins out. So there. No, not so there. No, so that's why I'm doing it. I'm just going to baste around them. I've got all this thread still in my needle, so I might as well use it. I'm just going to, whoops, have to be careful with silk because it can, it's quite fine as well. No, it's puckered, there we go, it's alright. And when you do the invisible baste and you get all the distraction of the pins away, you can really then have a look at your piece and see if you are really happy with it. I'm just making excuses now as to why I'm doing yet more basting. Because, you know, the pins, well, visually, these aren't too bad because they're only the little white heads on them. They're not those really bright coloured ones or those ones with the big disc, you know, those flat pins with the big disc on the end. So they're not that visually disturbing, which is another reason why I like them. But even so, they do distract your eye, and they also distort the cloth where they've gone in and out. And there's something about a basted cloth, a I call these back cloths, you know, like a back cloth in a theatre, and then all the drama happens in front of that. So when you've got a basted back cloth, if you do a base, you know, if you baste yourself a back cloth, have a feel of it before you start putting stitching in it. Just have a little feel of it in your hands. It's just something about it feels lovely. Right, that's that one. 1 down, 5 to go. Let's do 1 back stitch, it won't go anywhere. And these 2 I can probably do with the 1 length of cloth. But I've had several people saying, in a very nice way, oh, please don't keep fast forwarding and cutting things out, we want to see the whole thing. And someone said, well, if people don't want to see the whole thing, they can fast forward, which I guess is true, you know. You can fast forward, but you can't see the bits that I've cut out, no matter how hard you try. Although I must say as well, I do have to be a little bit aware of my very slow Wi-Fi, broadband internet type thing. Because the upload speed is, well, just to give you an idea, the part 2 of the stitch journal, of the other stitch journal, was 1 hour and 20 minutes and something, thereabouts. I leave it to upload overnight, which I did, and the next morning it was still only 60% uploaded, so that was over, what, let's say 8 hours. So I have to be aware of that. I don't know if you want to hear about my uploading woes. It's not really a problem. I've found, you know, I've found a solution, which is to do it overnight, which usually works fine. Right, so that's that one, and I should have started here somewhere, and I could have gone round there and then done that one straight away, but I didn't, so I'll have to cut my thread off. When you do, you don't even have to start with a knot really when you're basting. It's just a habit. You can just start with a back stitch and it will hold. Get this little one on. So I think when I've basted all these on, before I do the stitching, I'm going to go and let the dogs out and have some lunch, because it's 1:15 already, and I wonder I'm getting peckish. You're all alone today. And then I'll come back this afternoon and do my fancy stitching, or at least start it, in case you were interested. Which probably not, because for you it will be the blink of an eye thanks to the wonders of technology. You might see a little jump. I do my best with the editing to avoid little jumps in the video, but a technical whiz I am not. So that's that side done. But I must say it has been so lovely these last few weeks since I really started. I had this channel for quite a long time, and for a long time there were only a couple, and really I'd started it to put up some flip throughs of some books I'd made that were too long to make reels of on, you know, on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and that I wanted to share with people. And but I really only started making these sort of tutorial-y type videos a short while ago. But I must say, it feels like I've been doing it for a long time. And there's many of you that comment regularly, and your names, you know, I recognise your names, and it's like a little community, a little global community of stitchers. And it's so nice. I'm really enjoying it. And I'm happy to see that some of you seem to be enjoying it too. And I've got too long a bit of thread, because I wanted to have enough to do all these 3. And I hope it doesn't get in a tangle. You always hope. That's it's an English poet, I do believe, I may be wrong, called John Donne. And Big Dog's barking. He thinks it's lunchtime as well. He thinks it's time he got let out. English poet called John Donne, who talks about the triumph of hope over experience. I like that expression, if you think about what it means. You know, your experience tells you that something's not going to work, but your hope tells you that it's still worth a try. The triumph of hope over experience. And that's me with my long bits of thread. Don't get in a knot now. This little piece of cotton, which is now blue, was actually white with pink flowers with green stems. It was a very fine cotton lawn, I think it was. And that came, there was a dress shop in Holland, not a dress shop, a dress fabric shop. It was a sewing shop, and I got all excited and went to look, but it was all about dressmaking, which I don't really do. But anyway, outside was a cardboard box with some scraps in, oddment ends of bolts and, you know, stuff. Really reasonable prices. And I don't often buy new cloth, but since it was oddments and this big piece was very cheap and very nice, I talked myself into, because it's an oddment, it's not wrong to buy it. And I made a skirt out of it. I'm going back a long time. But it was a bit sheer, and when I say I made a skirt, what I mean is I made a tube and put some elastic through the top, because I'm not a dressmaker. And I never really wore it. So I cut it up for the cloth. I, took the elastic out, and that bit has been in the indigo. I'm not going to do indigo by video at any point, so please don't ask. But just, there are many people who do indigo. There are many different ways of doing it. I am by no means an expert. I am very much trial and error. I have an organic indigo vat. Indigo is about the only thing these days that I buy in terms of natural dye that I don't grow, or I could grow it and extract it, but it's a very, very lengthy process. So I do treat myself to a little bit of fair trade indigo about once every 2 years, I think. I buy 50 grams. And I have a vat which lives on my kitchen windowsill, which is an organic vat reduced with ferrous sulfate, which is iron, in sulfate form, in powdered form, which is very good for dyeing cellulose, so cotton and linen, basically. But not very good for dyeing silk and wool, because silk and wool doesn't like iron. But it's just a big saucepan, basically, with a lid on. But to get it to reduce sometimes can take me a couple of days when it's sat for a while, and I usually do get it to reduce, but it's a lot of trial and error. I did a workshop when I was in England, a 2-part workshop on how to make different organic indigo vats, because you can reduce them using synthetic chemicals. I don't say chemicals because everything's chemicals. That's a little pet thing of mine when people say it's not chemical. Well, it is, because everything's chemicals, but you mean synthetic rather than natural, even saying organic, because organic things are still chemicals. Anyway, sorry, get off your hobby horse. Everything's chemicals. The 3 organic indigo vats, as per Michel Garcia, if you're interested, while we're talking about Boro inspired and so on, it seemed appropriate. There are 3 basics. One is reduced. Indigo is not soluble in water. It needs to have its oxygen removed in order to make the dye molecules accessible. So you have to do what's called a reduction in an indigo vat. And you can do that with either with ferrous sulfate, with fructose, like a fruit sugar, or with henna. These are the three basic. Which all, and then in this lovely 2-day workshop that I did, we made one of each, or the teacher made one of each. And then we had a play with them. And I very much like the colours of the iron vat. It's called the iron vat, the ferrous vat. If you are interested, I would recommend the I think that's how you say it, MIAWA website. I think they're based in Canada. They've got a lot of information about all kinds of natural dyes, and also about indigo. But I shall not be doing indigo vat making or anything, because yeah, I'm not good enough at it to even think about teaching it. If you do a synthetic vat, then you're reducing with chemicals that aren't very nice. And I don't find the blues as pleasing. Again, that's personal choice. If you want to do that type of vat, then, you know, that's absolutely up to you. But I do love my little ferrous vat. So that's my indigo story, which has got me to the end of my basting. So there's my little piece, all basted. And you can't feel it, you can't reach in and feel it, but if you watch me feel it, there's just something about them when they're all basted like that. There's no pins to bite you. And there's this little cloth that you've made. It's like you've made a cloth out of other bits of cloth. And it's all ready now to have its embellishments and fancy stitching done onto it.